Math fails. You bring up one of my favorite subjects. First of all, there is not really any ifs about it. Life is a dream. Life is a dream. No, reality is a construction. And we live inside this construction, and it's a mental construction, which makes it like a dream, a daydream. Yeah, I say there's no doubt. There is no doubt that we are in a dream-like world. Why do I say that? Well, I rely on my materialism. And I remind you, it's a skeptical materialism, right? It's an empirical materialism. Okay, really quickly, it's I know I exist because I'm the perceiver. Anything that I perceive exists, and I wonder only as what does it exist? Merely as a perception, in other words, a dream, or is it coming from this consistent source of consistent sort of perceptions that are also dreams but are very consistent? And whatever it is causing that consistent, in other words, the sense experiences, we don't know which ones are sense experiences because of the dream example you gave. We have to look at all of them and compare them. And the ones that are very consistent, those are the ones that we associate with the senses and ultimately with material reality. Material reality is whatever's causing that. In other words, if we're in a dream, and let's face it, the idea of the ancient idea is that we were in a dream. There were spirits and things, and there was magic, and it was God's dream. Ultimately, they said, whose dream? It's God's dream. And since it's God, that's why his dreams are so much more solid than ours, and they're consistent. So what? Then the part of this dream that is God's dream, that's material. That's the materialism. That's what the material is. It's God's dream stuff. Okay? And we would still have our dreams, which are just our dreams. And that's bullshit, right? We don't think we're really in God's dream. I don't think we are in God's dream. So I believe still that there's something out there. And I don't know exactly what it is or whose dreams or how much it's energy and matter and all of that stuff. We're looking into it. That's physical scientists. It's the study of the characteristics of the material world. But we can define that skeptically. I guess that wasn't really that quick. So that's the materialism. But taking materialism into account, this is how we get to the idea that there's something more than a dream. But it also concludes materialism that life is a dream. Okay, why? Because we have a material brain, and it's just a device, and it's creating simulations of the real world. And in terms of what I'm in right now, I pick up this leaf, and what is this leaf to me? Yeah, I think this leaf exists in the material world, but it's also a dream of mine. Why? Because I'm touching it, and I feel the touch, and I'm seeing it, and I can even hear my fingers, when they're touching it. And all of these sense images come to me as separated, right? The sound is separate, the eyes, get even separate parts of colors. Those aren't even all together. All the visual information doesn't just come whole as a leaf. It's like patches of color. And yet in my dream world, it's just one thing. It's just a leaf. It has all of those things. It has sounds. It has all of these qualities in it. And yet I know I get all the qualities separate. And I reassemble them into my model of this leaf. And why do I do that? Well, because I think in the material world there is an actual phenomena going on that I'm identifying. So my brain is built to identify these phenomena. But it doesn't change the fact that what I'm doing is I'm taking separate qualities and I'm saying these separate qualities correlate, and I'm bundling them together into my concept of a leaf. And I'm living in reference to my concept of a leaf. I don't live in reference to the fact that there's patches of brown and things in this leaf. To me, this is a leaf, and that's how I live. I live based on the dream part, the idea that I've recreated of a leaf. Now, we used to think that our recreation would have to be accurate, or else what's the point? Well, the point is it doesn't have to be accurate. We know that anymore. Approximations are good enough. We know that. We have no reason to think that it would have to be perfect in order for it to be useful. We'd like it to be perfect. We'd like it to be as good as possible. But we know now that it's not perfect. And it's also not as good as possible. But it's pretty good. And the fact is, there's a relation between that real phenomena and the thing that's in my mind. But I don't even want to call that leaf, that real leaf, a thing. It's a network of particles and energy. The idea of identifying a certain part of that network as a thing, like the whole leaf or maybe the veins of the leaf, and identifying these as things, that's just categorizing phenomena. And saying that the leaf is something separate from the world around it, again, I'm just categorizing phenomena. There's all these other phenomena, and I'm simply saying, well, the part of this phenomena that is this little brown section, that is the part I call a leaf. Okay, so I can't easily say for sure that it is a thing unless I'm just speaking loosely as the leaf, as whatever part of material reality is generating the sense experiences that I am recreating into an object. So this is the sense in which objects are inherently subjective. And we do reclaim materiality because through this definition of what is consistent, how much time do I have? In this definition of what is consistent, we have access to that only by knowing that life is a dream. At least, it may be more than a dream, but we know that at least it's a dream. So all of our strongest arguments are going to have to be based on what if it's a dream. All our strongest arguments have to be true even if it is a dream. You know, if I say here is the force of gravity on Earth, that's true whether I'm in a dream or a matrix or it's just a material reality or God's dream. You know, the strength of gravity is the same no matter what, because I've tested it in terms of my empirical evidence. In other words, in terms of my perceptions that stand up to these tests of consistency and cross-correlation. Okay, so it's all a mental assertion, so it works no matter what the material reality is. And so I also am allowed to identify material reality without asserting that it's some external separate world. No, it's just whatever's making some of my perceptions so consistent. Okay. Once I have accepted that, it's functionally equivalent to that consistency, to this idea of positing something akin to an external world. But if you're very much more careful, as I think I have been, you don't even posit an external world. You posit an intersubjective world, or even an interobjective. In other words, I exist. Other things exist because, like this leaf, creates these perceptions that are interacting with me, so it also exists. And it's very consistent, so I say I don't think it exists just as a dream. This exists as part of material reality, whatever that is. And to me, looking closely at this with general relativity and quantum mechanics, and even also, of course, classical mechanics, I think that the external world is it's not a place that we're all embedded in. It's a network of relationships. So in other words, when there's me and you, and the external world for me is just whatever's in between you and me. It's this intersubjective world. So the missing piece in that, for it to not be a solipsistic, is merely that I grant real existence to these other things. I don't conclude that they're all imaginary. They're all like unicorns and figments of imagination. And I say some of them really are created by consciousness that is not, at least directly, might be related to me. We might be part of the same bigger conscious, but it's also distinct from me. I have a different part of that bigger conscious, if that's the case, or perhaps I just have my own conscious as an individual and they have their own, and the connections are our physical connections. And once you grant that to other people, because they sort of deserve that, just to be respectful, because you want them to grant it to you. Plenty of practical reasons of social interaction. If we were less social creatures, it might be harder to see this, but as social creatures, we know we want relationships with our family and our community. So we grant them this reality, and that creates also a concept of an external world, because the external world is the one in which there's space for us both to have our own dreams, our own space for our own self-being. And really, I think that's also how we grant external reality to objects, because we're saying that other people could perceive and interact with those objects even if we're not involved. So, I don't think I wrapped it up exactly, but those are my thoughts on that subject, and it's a favorite subject of mine. So, cheers.